Hello everyone, peace be upon you. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and stay with me until the end of the story. Also, leave a comment telling me which city and country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my story has reached. For those of you who have already subscribed, I sincerely wish you good health, ease in all your affairs, abundant blessings, and may all your hopes and dreams come true. Amen. Now, let's begin the story. The sun was barely up over Nellis when the hangar lights snapped to full and the cold air hit like a warning. Lauren Mitchell walked in with her helmet bag tight against her side, boots tapping a steady beat on the concrete. Row 9 waited for her at the far end of Hangar 09, narrow aisle, chipped paint, the last slot anyone wanted during evaluations. She didn't look at the faces around her. She looked at the checklist, at the simulator schedule, at the notes she'd scribbled until midnight. Keep the flow clean. Anticipate the lock. Break early, not late. She breathed once and set the bag down. Around her, the morning routine moved fast. Techs rolled ladders, crew chiefs called torque numbers, tow bars clanked. F-22s sat in perfect lines under the white glare, quiet for now, like they were measuring everyone who dared to stand near them. Lauren checked her name on the board, row 9, support block, observation window for the afternoon sim. Same as yesterday. The note next to it read, evaluate SA under pressure. She didn't need the reminder. She'd been living under it. Colonel Patrick O'Neill passed with 2 instructors and a clipboard. He didn't slow. A glance, a nod, nothing more. Major Jessica Carter peeled off to the simulators and started walking the row, eyes on each trainee's gear and posture. When she reached Lauren, the questions were basic and fast: comms, oxygen, emergency. Lauren answered with one-word clarity. Carter's pen scratched, then she moved on. No criticism, no praise. That was how the morning went. She strapped into the sim later than planned and ran through the brief like it was a drill she owned. The terrain package was desert, broken ridgelines, hot air, thin margins. She flew the scenario by the book, then off book. Cut angles tighter. Trade altitude for time. Keep the radar quiet until you have to speak. When the end exercise flashed, the room stayed neutral. Good technique, someone said. Watch your scan. She nodded, unstrapped, and walked back to row 9 with the same straight line she used for everything. Inside, it stung. Outside, nothing showed. By noon the hangar warmed. Tools hummed, radios clicked, the smell of fuel settled in. Lauren opened her notebook at the end of the row and mapped a new sequence with blunt pencil marks. If threat appears here, brake left early. If the notch fails, climb into the bandit's blind. She thought about the last few months, late nights alone in the sim bay, repeating the same merge until her hands stopped thinking and just moved. She thought about the comments that never came, the way people talked 2 seats over like she wasn't there. Row 9 didn't talk back, but it had a memory. It remembered every time you were almost good enough. Kelly Morgan's voice drifted faint from the tower channel on a speaker in the corner: weather, runway, pattern traffic. Lauren listened without looking up. She pictured the tower cab, the glowing radar scope, the way Kelly leaned in when traffic stacked up. Up in that room, information mattered. Down here, proof did. Mark Henderson crossed the hangar in a flight suit still creased from the dryer, helmet under his arm. He said hello to a crew chief, bumped knuckles, kept moving. He was on the board for an afternoon hop. Lauren didn't break her line to say anything. She just watched the way he checked his jet. No show. Just the ritual. She respected that. Carter called a quick huddle by the simulators: terms, timelines, standards. We're evaluating judgment, not courage, she said. Make clean decisions. The group broke. Lauren stayed back a beat, then followed, taking her spot without trying to be seen. When it was her turn again, she flew the card tighter, shaved seconds, kept her comms short. The debrief hit the same notes: competent, composed, expand your scan. She wrote it down like it was new, even though it wasn't. Evening slid in across the desert and cooled the floor. The big doors at the far end were open now, and a thin orange line sat over the runway. Most people were done for the day. Lauren wasn't. She asked for another sim hour and got a shrug that meant yes. She set the seat, tightened the harness, and ran the cold start steps until the numbers matched what lived in her head. The scenario loaded rough, multiple tracks, ground threats, poor comms. She didn't flinch. She trimmed, turned, cut speed, reattacked. She failed a piece, restarted, did it again. And again. And again. When the last, end exercise, finally stuck, she powered down, sat quiet for a count of 10, then unstrapped. The hangar was almost empty. A single F-22 near row 9 caught the last light and threw it back at her with a dull shine. She walked up to the nose and touched the cold panel with 2 fingers. It wasn't superstition. It was a promise. Outside, the runway lights came up one by one. A transport lifted, small and slow against the dark. The bass noise softened to a steady pulse, generators, a cart whine, a door latch somewhere in the distance. Lauren shouldered the helmet bag and stood under the open sky for a moment longer. She had been measured all day and left with nothing dramatic to show for it. But the gap between almost and enough was closing, one clean decision at a time. Row 9 didn't feel like defeat tonight. It felt like a line she would step over. Not loud. Not with speeches. Just with the same steady beat of boots on concrete, the same tight grip on a checklist, the same breath before a merge. Tomorrow would come with another board, another note about situational awareness, another neutral debrief. Fine. She would be there first, notebook open, headset checked, ready to run the card until instinct and judgment were the same thing. Far across the ramp, a maintenance truck rolled by and the driver lifted a hand. She lifted hers back. Small things mattered. She turned for the barracks, eyes already mapping tomorrow's plan: early sim, quick review with Carter, tower feed over coffee, back to Hangar 09 before most people cleared the gate. No shortcuts. No noise. Just work. The kind that stacked up and didn't fall when someone pushed on it. Above Nellis, the sky was clear and hard. Somewhere out there, a mission would ask a question and wait for an answer. Lauren didn't know when that would be. She knew she'd be ready when it came. Row 9 had a view of the door, and she planned to walk through it. The chance arrived before sunrise, carried on a clipped call that cut across the base net and tightened every back straight. The ops board flipped from routine to urgent. A high-priority reconnaissance package was moving early into hot airspace, chatter had spiked overnight, ground emitters were restless, and the window was narrow. The hangar woke hard. Ladders moved. Panels closed. Crew chief spoke in short sentences that didn't waste anyone's time. Lauren was already up, headset checked, notebook closed, coffee cold on a workbench she wouldn't come back to. She slid toward the tower annex for the feed, because information was the only seat she had been given. From the glass, the ramp looked like a chessboard about to break. Kelly's voice held steady over the frequency: runway, winds, sequence, call signs. O'Neill stood by the wall screens with arms folded, jaw set. Carter tracked the mission card with a pen point that didn't shake. Mark's jet was second in sequence, canopy down, lights alive. Lauren kept her breathing even and her eyes on the data: altitude blocks, timing gates, threat rings. She had flown this kind of map in a sim 100 times. The difference now was that you could smell the fuel through the vents. Takeoffs were clean. The package slid into the sky and turned toward the desert, quiet and purposeful. In the tower, the background buzzed thin to essential noise: radar sweeps, controller exchanges, one weather update. Lauren leaned closer to the scope as the tracks leveled, the formation settling into the plan's spine. 10 minutes later, a variable showed up where it shouldn't have, a fast change in a ground pattern, then 2 error returns that didn't match the brief. Kelly relayed to Ops. O'Neill's eyes flicked to Carter. Adjustments went out. The package flexed, held, moved. For a breath, the picture stabilized. It broke fast. A burst of static tore a hole in the comm, and Mark's call sign clipped mid-sentence. His altitude line dipped, recovered, dipped again. The range lit with returns that stacked like teeth. You didn't need to be in a cockpit to feel the air get thin. Lauren's fingers pressed into the console edge. She ran through every escape she had ever written, clamped the timeline, simplify, create a door and push the problem through it. The scope disagreed. Mark's symbol wobbled, then drifted toward a canyon line that made bad things worse. Audio check, confirm, Kelly called, voice flat but louder now. Noise came back, then nothing. The room tightened. Someone swore very quietly. Lauren heard her own heartbeat in the headset foam. A scratch of carrier slid across the net like a knife on glass, and then 4 syllables cut through, 2 words that weren't on any public list, a code name that didn't belong to Mark, a name that belonged to her. It wasn't a request. It was a summons. Heads turned. O'Neill's brow pulled down a fraction. Carter looked up from the pen and found Lauren's eyes, and that was all the permission she was going to get. She was moving before the room decided what to do with her. Down the stairs, past the bulletin board, out into the chill that bit the throat. Hangar 09 gaped open to the ramp. A ready F-22 sat fueled and quiet under the lights, canopy up, steps in place, a maintenance cart still humming beside it. A crew chief started to say something and then didn't. Lauren climbed. Harness. Oxygen. Seat height. She set switches by memory, not speed, but both were on her side. The jet came alive with a layered thrum that pressed into her back and steadied her hands. Across the ramp, a line of orange pushed up through the dark. She rolled to taxi, nose light cutting a slice through exhaust haze. In the tower, Kelly's voice chased her to the hold short. Stand by, clearance imminent. A beat, then runway clear. Lauren pushed, and the jet answered with a clean, hard run that pinned her to the seat and put the end of the world in the rearview. Gear up. Climb. Turn to the point where the picture had gone wrong. She built a corridor in her head that marked out what she could accept and what she would refuse. The radio filled with clipped updates from the package lead, a support flight checking in, a tanker rolling earlier than planned. She kept her answers short. No extras. No drama. Get there. See what's true. The desert spread beneath her, a broken quilt of stone and shadow, ridges like knuckles punching at the sky. She eased power, trimmed out, and let the jet's balance settle in her bones. The first radar sweep showed clutter and heat, too much to trust with eyes alone. She let the second sweep confirm the shape of the problem, then the third. Mark's signal was back, weak and wrong, lower than it should be, near a valley that funneled mistakes into rock. Other returns tracked to his north like patient wolves. Ground energy pulsed from the east, not strong but close enough to matter at the worst time. Lauren talked once, to the picture, not the room. I have him. Kelly relayed. The package shifted a degree that told her they heard. O'Neill's voice did not enter the net. Carter didn't either. That was good. Extra voices add pressure. Pressure steals time. She needed all of it. She dropped to a smarter altitude for the winds and watched the gauge she never stopped watching. She felt for the line between fast enough to own the merge and slow enough to think. The sky in front of her looked empty in the way that means it's holding its breath, and the ground below was a map of edges that punish small errors. She picked a ridge to use as a mask, slid behind it, and let the last miles unspool without rush. She reviewed 3 exits, then 2, then accepted 1. Choices got simple under fire. The first bandit return shifted like it smelled her. Good. Let it look the wrong way. She stayed quiet 2 beats longer than comfortable, then spoke to the net again, not asking, just setting anchors. Mark, this is Lauren. Maintain heading 270. Do not climb. Silence, then a broken syllable that sounded like yes. That was enough. She turned, not sharp, just clean, and put herself where his worst threat would have to deal with her first. Back at Nellis, the tower fed the picture like a metronome. Kelly's cadence stayed steady. Traffic, Angels, update. Lauren answered with what the jet and her gut agreed on. Her hands were calm. Her jaw wasn't tight. The fear that used to visit her at night didn't come. All that work in row 9 had burned it out of her or taught it where to sit. She counted down the last seconds to the join and watched the desert lift toward her like a rising fist. She saw Mark then, small and steady, a single shape that held its lane because the alternative was worse. The air around him was not clean, you could feel the invisible lines tugging. She slid between 2 of those lines and made the air a little harder to read for anything hunting him. The radio woke with a scratch from his side. Lauren, visual negative, instruments rough. She didn't fill the space. Copy. Hold 270. I'm with you. Threat to the north twitched. Threat to the east complained. The plan in her head got simpler, make one clean door, put Mark through it, bar it behind him. She watched for the move that would force her to burn the plan and write a new one in 2 heartbeats. It didn't come, not yet. She eased another degree left, because the ridge allowed it, and let the jet do what it was built to do when someone asked the right way. Behind her, Nellis was still there, small and far. Ahead, the valley opened like a mouth with sharp teeth. She put her shoulders back against the seat and made the first real promise of the day. If the sky was asking for proof, she would give it. The door she'd been staring at from row 9 was gone now. There was only the path she was carving in clean air toward a pilot who needed it, and the decision she had already made to carry the weight until they were both past the line where questions stop and answers begin was a strip of air she had to hold clean for as long as it took. Lauren kept the jet trimmed and steady, eyes moving in a practiced rhythm, threat north, ground pulse east, Mark's altitude, fuel, horizon, back to threat. She didn't argue with the picture or hope it would change. She accepted it and started moving pieces. Package, Lauren. I'm building a corridor west of the valley. Mark stays 270. Support holds at Angels 20. Do not crowd. Kelly copied with the same flat cadence, and the room behind her turned those words into actions she didn't have to watch. The first chase element nudged closer from the north, curious, not reckless. Lauren used the ridge like a wall, keeping her signal small until the last second, then showed just enough face to make them commit. She didn't get greedy. She wanted attention, not a brawl. Mark's voice came back thin but there. Instruments unstable. Flight controls sluggish. She pressed her palm flat against the throttle to keep from overworking it. Copy. Hold heading. Don't climb. If you lose horizon, call immediately. He clicked twice. Good enough. Ground energy ticked up a bar to the east, a timer she couldn't ignore. She slid 3 degrees left to give it less to work with and let the jet breathe through the thin air. Wind shear tried to push her high, she countered with a small trim change and kept the plan on rails. The northern threat widened, likely looking for a bracket. She cut their angle by taking space before they owned it. A quiet turn, a fraction early, the kind of move that doesn't look like much until it saves you 10 seconds later. Mark, stand by for a small correction, she said as the valley pinched. When I say now, offset 5 right and hold. Do not chase me. She counted the rocks on the ridge line, not to be poetic, but because counting kept her honest about distance. Now. He moved. Not smooth, but obedient. The eastern pulse bumped again and then faded, either repositioning or thinking. She took the gift and pushed a hair faster to keep time on her side. Support flight checked in from high left. We have your north group. Clear for your corridor. She didn't turn it into a conversation. Hold. Do not go cold on me. If they commit, you bite first. A short laugh from a voice she didn't know came and went. The north returns tightened. Good. That meant predictable behavior. She trimmed again, felt the jet settle, and opened the door another mile wider. Mark's breathing hit the net between his words. Warning lights blinking. Controls heavy. She kept him from spiraling into the problem. Acknowledge only. Stay level. 270 is your whole job. He did as told. The valley floor stepped up under both of them faster than she liked. She dropped a little more, accepted the risk for the cover it bought, and rolled a degree to keep out of the wind's bad habits. Kelly fed updates like a metronome from Nellis. Picture steady. West corridor holding. Support flight green. O'Neill stayed off the net. Carter did too. Lauren felt them anyway, their eyes inside the picture, but their silence gave her more room to think. She took it. The North group flinched toward her, finally annoyed with her refusal to play hero. She gave them something to chew on, a small presentation, a clean outside line, and no panic. They moved faster than before, and that was fine. Speed exposes impatience. Mark, recommend confirm oxygen on, cabin settings check. If your horizon fails, fly my voice, she said. Copy, he managed. She imagined his panel like she had seen it 100 times in the sim. She pictured which warnings were on and which were lying. She talked in short lines, nothing complicated, every sentence a step he could do without thinking. He took the steps. The airplane stayed in the window. The corridor west opened into better sky, still rough, but with fewer traps. That was the good news. The bad news was fuel math starting to ask for its due. She did the numbers twice, not because she doubted herself but because there wouldn't be time to fix a lazy mistake later. The tanker was sliding early, but not early enough to help in the valley. She would have to push Mark into cleaner air before anyone else could take weight off her shoulders. The eastern ground pulse woke again, harder than before. She felt it more than she saw it, the way the jet talked when attention found it. Flares on standby, she told no one in particular. To Mark, if you see anything that looks like a flash off your right, do not climb. Do not turn toward it. He clicked once. She tugged one more degree of turn from the plan and lined her nose on the point where the valley opened like a ramp to the west. North group accelerated. Support flight shifted from hold to ready. We can drop in. Negative, Lauren said. If you drop, you push them toward me. Stay high. If they turn hot on you, press. She could almost hear the pilot's grin, but he obeyed. The air around Lauren tightened, the returns grew sharper, the window narrowed. She talked to Mark one more time. When we reach the next ridge, you'll feel smoother air. Do not celebrate. Stay on 270. When I say brake, you brake left 5. Not 6. Not 4. 5. Copy. Copy. They reached the ridge. The air steadied as promised. She counted 3 breaths and then the picture changed. The ground pulse jumped high, and the North group started their swing. Brake left 5, now. Mark turned. She turned wider, taking the push that would have hit him and letting it bleed through her plan. The jet's frame hummed. Her shoulder blades pressed into the seat. The warning tone stayed off, which meant the line she had drawn was still the right one. Support flight rolled hot on the North group with perfect timing, pulling their noses up and stealing their pressure. We've got your teeth, the lead said, satisfied. Good work, Lauren answered. Do not drag them east. Copy. The eastern pulse faded again, whether blocked by terrain or cautious, she didn't care. What mattered was that the corridor was now real, not theoretical. The west opened for them like a door she had paid for with exact change. Mark, status. Controls steadier. Warning light cycling. Visual partial. Stay with me. 270. The way he said, with you, had less shake in it. She let that be his only victory. She checked fuel again, accepted a margin that was thin but not irresponsible, and called the tanker to keep rolling. Kelly's voice came back calm. Tanker committed. Pattern set. Altitude came up as the terrain dropped, and the wind lost its worst habits. Lauren lifted a touch, gave the jet a kinder angle of attack, and watched the ground slide from teeth to flat. The radio noise changed too, less strained, more procedural. She didn't relax. She kept eyes moving, because that was the promise. Carry the weight until past the line. They weren't past it yet. The North group, bruised and busy with support, stopped being her immediate problem. The East stayed quiet. The valley gave way to the wider basin that led toward friendlier sky. She took a long breath and let it out slow. Mark, minor correction, right 2 degrees. Good. Hold. He did. The jet's wobble calmed a fraction more. She donated a little speed back into the tank without letting the timeline grow teeth again. Lauren, package lead, a new voice came in, formal and respectful now. We're set to assume if you need relief. Roger, she said. Stand by 2 minutes. I'll hand him to you clean. It wasn't pride. It was the plan. Don't hand over a problem if you can finish the piece you own. She angled them to intersect the pre-briefed handoff line. The sky ahead took on the color that means you're almost home. She didn't say that out loud. She told Mark what mattered. On my mark, switch to package lead frequency. You'll read a vector and altitude. Comply exactly. Ready. Mark. He switched. The new voice caught him smoothly. 270 confirmed. Climb 1000. Climbing. Lauren stayed on the edge of the picture, ready to give back the weight if anything slipped. Nothing slipped. The corridor held. Support flight eased back to the top, still between the North group and any idea of redemption. The East never pushed. The tanker called, on station. The line where questions stop came up under them like a hard floor you can finally stand on. Lauren felt it in her shoulders first, then in her hands. She didn't mark the moment with a cheer. She called the handoff, verified Mark's climb, and took her vector to the tanker track. The room at Nellis exhaled in a way that didn't carry across the net, but she felt it anyway. Kelly's cadence softened half a note. O'Neill remained a ghost. Carter stayed silent. That was all fine. The door was open behind them and closed to the trouble they'd walked through. The next piece would demand new choices, but this piece was done clean, and Lauren kept moving without looking back. The vector to the tanker ran straight as a chalk line across quiet air, but quiet never lasts. A scratch of static, a clipped call from support, then a shape on the scope that didn't belong, a late push from the east, low and fast, the kind that waits for relief to make people soft. The package lead started to spread, building a fence. Lauren didn't ask permission. She nudged the nose 5 degrees off her line and slid down 100 feet, reducing the silhouette, cutting her sound in the places the wind wanted to hide it. Lauren, confirm fuel state. Kelly's voice rode the net, calm but closer. State green enough, Lauren said, and that was as conversational as she would get. The tanker was minutes away. The threat was seconds. She watched the eastern return grow teeth and checked the ground, broken flats giving way to a shallow wash, then a deeper cut that would give cover at a cost. She could climb and make herself a better target. Or drop and make the world smaller, meaner, and less forgiving. She chose small and mean. Package, hold your climb, she said, steady. I'm taking the bite. No one argued. O'Neill stayed off the air. Carter stayed invisible inside the picture. Support flight edged to a lid position. Mark, now under lead's wing, was silent, which was exactly right. Lauren skimmed the wash line and felt the air turn to grit. The jet settled into her hands like it trusted her to do the hard thing without shaking. The eastern push split into two prongs, one meant to distract the fence, the other meant to cut straight at whoever thought she could play shepherd. Fine. She kept her mouth shut and adjusted three small things that would look like luck later: a touch more trim, a hair of power, a notch of bank to use a darker fold of terrain. The scope stuttered, then smoothed, then gave her the picture she needed. She spoke once. Flares armed. No one else crowded the floor. Kelly copied without a question. The first prong tested support high. They answered with clean timing and never dragged the mess toward her. The second prong took the bait. It came hot, low, and eager, good for them, bad for their plan. Lauren let them close inside the distance where decisions cost the most. The wash curved ahead into a canyon with walls that rose like a warning. She would have one shot to break a lock and steal the angle back. She set the jet for that one shot. Lauren, tanker 1 mile out of your track, Kelly announced. Hold your right when able. Negative hold, Lauren said. I'm about to get loud. Her chest felt steady. Her jaw was loose. The fear that visits people when they realize they've run out of easy options never sat down in her cockpit. She counted the last markers: scrub patch, rock shoulder, shadow seam. Then she made the move she had saved for the day the sky asked her to prove what she'd been building in silence. She went nose low a breath sooner than comfort, rolled into the shadow seam so the canyon wall ate part of the signal, and dragged the enemy just a degree off truth. In the same heartbeat, she popped flares clean, no panic, no spray, and pitched into a climbing twist that used the wall's shape like a lever. The jet groaned but held. The lock tone that wasn't hers died like someone cut a wire. The return behind her slid past the line where it would have been useful and had to think again. She did not give it time. She flattened, stole back the airspeed she traded, and cut across the canyon mouth into the wider basin, pushing the fight into a place where support could see the whole board. Now, she said, and high cover dropped a hammer, precise, brief, just enough to turn the hot push into a cold memory. The net filled with two words that mattered more than applause. Picture clean. Tanker called, on your left. Lauren climbed to the bracket, kept her wings level, and came aboard like she hadn't just pulled the floor out from under a hunt. Contact was smooth. Fuel flowed. The cockpit smell shifted to something dull and warm. She let her shoulders settle an inch and checked the rest of the picture. Mark was climbing stable under lead. Support was resetting the lid. The East was done pretending it wanted a peace today. Lauren, confirm status, Kelly asked, softer now. Status good, she said. Jet happy. Pilot upright. A laugh cracked somewhere on the net and died just as quick. Business returned. O'Neill still didn't speak. She didn't need him to. She knew the look he was wearing, calculating, surprised, maybe a little less certain about the box he'd put row 9 inches. Off the tanker, she eased back into the formation's shoulder and let the speed bleed to something civilized. The desert below looked less like a weapon and more like a map again. Carter's voice finally came through, controlled and even. Mitchell, debrief item, that canyon break, you saw the shadow seam early. Yes, ma'am. Copy. No metal in the tone. No sugar. Just a line she'd get to write with more ink later. The egress track bent toward friendlier sky and the thin blue beyond it. Lauren kept scanning like the world still wanted to bite. Old habit. Earned habit. She checked on Mark with a single question. How's your panel? Quieting down, he said. Copy, she replied, and left it alone. He didn't need a speech. He needed sky and silence and a runway that wasn't moving. Nellis came up on the horizon in a clean line, runway lights counting back from far to near. Approach handed them down the ladder one at a time, calm and ordinary, like the morning hadn't torn at the edges. The package touched down in sequence, tires whispering, drag chutes absent because today hadn't demanded that kind of theater. Lauren took her turn, set it down true, let the nose wheel kiss the centerline, and rolled without milking it. On the taxi, the world got loud in small ways, martial wands waving, a crew chief jogging, a headset swinging from a neck. She followed fingers to the spot outside Hangar 09 and set the brake. The canopy cracked and hot base air pushed in, full of fuel and dust and the faintest hint of victory that no one wanted to name yet. Lauren pulled her helmet off and sat still for one extra breath, not to absorb drama but to clear the board in her head. She dropped to the ladder and hit the concrete with the same boots that had walked past this jet in near dark more times than she could count. The line crew looked at her without the old polite blankness. Something new lived in their eyes, credit, maybe, or the start of it. Kelly's voice popped in her ear from a handheld someone had shoved in her hand. "Nice work." "Nice comms," Lauren said. Across the ramp, the hangar doors framed a slice of shade and the outline of people waiting who had words to say. Not yet. First came the checks, the walk-around, the quiet ritual that marks the difference between theater and craft. Lauren ran a hand along the panel she had touched last night and felt the subtle heat coming off the skin. The jet had done its job. She had done hers. The sky had presented a bill and she had paid it in correct change. Behind her, a cart clanked, a pen scratched, a logbook opened. Someone called her name, not loud, not for show. She turned toward the voices and the debrief and whatever came next with the same steady line she had carried into the canyon. The fight had asked for a decision. She had made it clean. Now the room would catch up. Debrief started the way it always did, no music, no applause, just chairs scraping and screens waking to a frozen map of everything that had tried to go wrong. Lauren took a seat at the end of the table, helmet on the floor by her boot, notebook closed but ready. O'Neill stood with a pointer he never used, arms crossed, eyes on the plot. Carter ran the timeline in clean slices, voice steady. Kelly sat near the back with a headset around her neck like a stethoscope, listening as if the net were still talking. Mark, a shade pale, had a water bottle he never managed to drink from. "Sequence," Carter said, and the screens obeyed. "Takeoff. Push. First deviation. Loss of comms." The dip in altitude that had pulled every stomach in the tower down with it. Carter didn't fill silence. She let the data talk. "Intervention," she said at the moment the code name cut the net in half. Heads turned toward Lauren without meaning to. She lifted her chin a millimeter and kept still. "What were you thinking at the first corridor call?" Carter asked, not to trap, but to tag decisions with reasons. "Time," Lauren said. "Keep it on my side. Create a simple door. Keep him from making a choice he can't undo." "Why that ridge?" "Masking. Wind. The east pulse was inconsistent. The terrain let me say no to it without arguing." Carter nodded, more ink for the line she'd promised during the egress. They ran the northern group's approach again. Supports lid. The moment the high flight wanted to drop and she told them to stay. "Why hold them?" O'Neill's voice finally entered the room, even and unreadable. "If they dropped, they'd push the fight into our corridor," Lauren said. "I needed pressure up top, not a knife in the same pocket." O'Neill gave one short nod and looked back at the screen. Then the canyon. The scrub patch. The shadow seam. The flares that came out like punctuation, not panic. Carter froze the frame at the twist and traced the path with the pointer O'Neill hadn't used. "You went early," she said. "By a breath," Lauren replied. "Enough to make their picture wrong without breaking mine. Risk? Acceptable for the cover it bought. Fuel was tight but green." O'Neill's jaw worked once, thinking. And if the lock had held? Different plan. Shorter life for the same idea. But it didn't. Mark cleared his throat. It came out rough. The voice cut through the noise, he said, eyes on the table. I didn't have horizon. I flew the voice. No one wrote that down, but everyone heard it. Kelly finally spoke, quiet like the net in the seconds just before traffic collides. Her cadence kept the room from stepping on her, she said. If we'd flooded the frequency, he would have chased ghosts. They wound the tape forward to the handoff line, the tanker join, the climb into ordinary air. Carter marked 3 items for later instruction blocks: corridor discipline under mixed threats, timing against ground energy in broken terrain, and the difference between leadership and noise. Good, she said, and that one syllable fell like a stamp. O'Neill set the pointer down and looked around the room like he was counting heads for a roll call that mattered. You made clean decisions under pressure, he said to Lauren. Not a compliment, a fact. You also took a jet off a line without a written tasking because someone called your name on a net that wasn't built for that. He let the sentence sit. Lauren didn't defend herself. She didn't shrink either. Yes, sir, she said. We'll discuss the chain next time we're not choosing between speed and a crater. Today, I'm satisfied you chose correctly. The oxygen in the room shifted, 2 degrees warmer, 1 pound lighter. Carter closed the file with a crisp click. Action items, she said. We refined the sim bank to include that shadow seam scenario. We teach the corridor like a muscle memory. We codify comms cadence for tower support during degraded instrument events. And we write down the canyon maneuver in terms that survive a cold read. Chairs pushed back. People stood. The hush outside the briefing room hum returned, a mix of carts, doors, and distant engines that meant the base was still alive. In the hallway, the looks that found Lauren weren't the old polite blanks. They were direct and clean, acknowledgement without theatrics. A crew chief tapped her forearm, small gesture, big meaning. Kelly's hand landed on her shoulder for a second, then was gone. Mark caught up at the corner where the light from the hangar fanned across the floor. He didn't make a speech. Thanks, he said. You kept it simple when I needed simple. You flew it, she answered. That made simple work. They stepped into hangar 09 together and paused. The jet she'd flown sat under a line of ceiling bulbs like a machine that knew it had done something right but didn't require praise. A tech rolled a ladder, whistling under his breath. Another wiped a panel with motions that said care, not ceremony. O'Neill's shadow hit the concrete before he did. Mitchell, he called. She turned. We're moving you out of row 9, he said. No drumroll. Just a relocation of a life. You'll rotate into the main block for next cycle. Carter will own your syllabus. Don't waste the seat. No, sir, she said, and it came out steady enough to carry but quiet enough to fit the room. Carter's mouth tipped in the smallest knot smile, the kind that leaves room for work. Be on the sim at 0500, she said. Bring your corridor notes. We'll test what you think you know and a few things you don't. Yes, ma'am. Mark drifted away toward his own checks, leaving a 2-finger salute that belonged to peers, not strangers. Word rolled across the flight line faster than official messages. You could feel it in the way people paused half a second longer when she passed, in the way conversations included her without rearranging themselves to make space. No spotlight, just gravity that had shifted a few clicks in her favor. She didn't chase it. She went to the bench, opened her notebook, and wrote 3 lines that weren't poetry. Watch the east pulse early, hold support high until it hurts, shadow seams are earned not found. Dusk edged across the ramp, cooling metal and skin. A transport lifted into a sky that had quit trying to look menacing. Lauren walked the jet with the crew chief and signed the log. The ritual was the point: say thank you in the language a machine understands, fuel, bolts, eyes on the places that wear. She touched the same panel she'd promised last night, not for luck now, but for continuity. The world changes by inches. You keep your inches. The barracks corridor smelled like detergent and dust. She dropped her bag on the narrow bed and sat for the first time since the canopy came open. For a minute, nothing moved. Then the day began to replay whether she asked it to or not, valley edges, tone that died at the twist, Kelly's cadence, Carter's one word, good, O'Neill's, satisfied, Mark's hoarse, thanks. None of it felt like a trophy. It felt like correct weight placed on the right shelves. Her phone buzzed on the steel nightstand, a message from an unknown base extension that was no longer unknown, training block updated. CU-0500. Carter. Another from Kelly, sleep if you can. Towers quiet. For now. She smiled a fraction and set the phone face down. Outside, the desert wind slid along the windows and said nothing dramatic. Inside, the room held the silence that follows a storm when you've counted all the pieces and they're still here. Tomorrow would bring new charts, new lines to draw, maybe new ways to fail. That was fine. Work beats worry. She stacked her notebook, set the alarm, and stretched the stiffness out of her shoulders. Nellis breathed around her, steady, unglamorous, alive. Row 9 wasn't a place she'd cling to or curse. It was a line on a floor she had stepped over and would never need to step back to. She turned out the light and let the dark be ordinary, not heroic. Somewhere on the field, a cart clattered. Somewhere in the tower, a scope swept. The sky outside was empty and patient. When it asked again, she'd answer the same way she did today, clear, on time, and without noise. Morning made good on that promise at 0457 when the sim bay lights warmed from blue to white and Carter was already there with a tablet under her arm. Corridor work, she said, no greeting required. Lauren nodded, slid into the seat, and let the harness click home. The scenario loaded with the day's new edges, ground energy that lied, winds that shifted late, a chase element that didn't spook. She flew the card without theater, missed one timing window by a heartbeat, corrected on the next pass, wrote the correction down as if it were a grocery item. Carter watched, said, again, and Lauren did it again until the mistake had no muscle left to flex. Word of yesterday's flight moved through the base like heat through metal, quiet, inevitable, measurable if you knew where to put your hand. No speeches. A memo slid across O'Neill's desk and came out the other side as a training note with 3 lines underlined, decision discipline, comms cadence, terrain leverage. In the tower, Kelly updated a checklist that would help the next voice keep the room from drowning its own pilot. On the line, crew chiefs added a box to their ritual that put flares on the list where they belonged, ready, not rhetorical. By mid-morning, the hangar felt different in small ways that matter. People who used to look through Lauren now looked at her and then passed her to the work, which is the best kind of attention. Mark came by with his helmet dangling from 2 fingers and the color back in his face. Panels clean, he said. Still flying 270. She smiled at that. Keep it boring, she told him. He laughed because he understood boring is what gets you home. O'Neill found her by the whiteboard where row 9 once lived like a stubborn shadow. Commendation packet is moving, he said, keeping his tone level because praise is a tool you use, not a sugar you pour. You'll lead a block on corridor ethics and degraded instruments. Carter will frame it. You'll write it. Yes, sir. He studied her a second longer than yesterday, the way a man measures whether the thing he's elevating will hold. And Mitchell, this isn't the end of anything. Understood, she said, because she did. Recognition is not a destination. It's clearance to taxi forward without asking twice. In the afternoon, the runway heat rippled. Jets came and went, carving their signatures into the dry air. Lauren stood under the shadow line of Hangar 09 with a notebook open to a page that had fewer words than most, questions instead of answers. How early is early enough? Where does silence help and where does it hurt? What is the smallest clean decision you can make when the picture is dirty? She wrote and crossed out, refining the lesson into something another pilot could pick up cold and not drop when it got hot. Kelly called her up to the tower between pushes. The cab was a ring of glass and light, scopes humming like low tide. "Wanted you to see it from up here," Kelly said, and pointed at the scope's pulse sweeping across the basin. "This is what the room felt like when you kept it simple." Lauren watched the green graphics breathe and thought about how a voice can sharpen or dull the picture. "We'll bake the cadence into training," she said. Kelly bumped her shoulder with a knuckle. "It already is." Back on the ramp, Carter handed her a printout. "Your canyon maneuver," she said. "We're naming it after the scene you saw." Lauren shook her head, but Carter's face didn't invite argument. "Names help people remember," she added. "Memory saves lives." They walked the shape on the concrete with their boots, tracing the entry, the pitch, the flare timing, the exit angle. Two crew chiefs listened without pretending not to, then repeated the steps back like a pre-flight. The shape became language. The language became habit. Late day slid in. The color over Nellis shifted from washed-out white to a gold that makes steel look warm. Mark taxied in from a systems check, canopy popping with a soft thunk. He gave a thumbs up that meant ordinary, and ordinary was the point. O'Neill stood in the hangar door, signed something with a deliberate hand, and watched the line without making it about himself. A base breathes easiest when the people in charge let the work be the main character. In the small office that used to collect her neutral debriefs, someone moved the row 9 placard to a lower shelf and hung a new board where her name sat beside a syllabus that didn't include the word support. The shift felt simple in the hand and heavy in the bone. She didn't pose for it. She capped a pen and got back to the draft Carter wanted on her desk before dinner. As the sun cut down behind the far ridge, Lauren took a slow walk along the fence line. Beyond it, the desert lay in the kind of quiet that isn't peace so much as pause. She thought about the girl who used to sit alone in a sim bay after lights out, flying merges no one would grade. She thought about the sound the net made when a code name found her across the noise. She thought about the corridor, the door, the rule she'd carved into herself one repetition at a time: keep the problem simple for the person who is carrying it. If there was a lesson worth stitching into the base, that was the stitch. She stopped by the jet and touched the panel she always did, the heat softer now. The crew chief nodded once, a tiny salute between trades. "See you at 0500, he said. "See you at 0500, she answered, because promises don't mean much if they don't have a clock attached. Night took the field without drama. The scope in the tower kept sweeping, a heartbeat in green. Somewhere, a rookie rewound today's briefing and heard Carter's even tone marking choices with reasons. Somewhere else, a voice practiced saying less and meaning more. The story that would be told about her wouldn't be a parade. It would be a checklist, a posture, a cadence on a bad day that kept a plane from becoming a crater. That was enough. More than enough. Inside her barracks room, the notebook went on top of the locker with the pen clipped to the cover. The alarm was set for a number that would feel early to everyone except the person who wanted it more. She lay back and let the day recede to where it belonged, filed, not worshipped. Tomorrow would not look exactly like today. That was the job. New weather, new teeth, new corners where the picture hides the truth. But the method would hold: watch, decide, speak when it helps, shut up when it doesn't, carve a door, pay in exact change. If she ever walked past row 9 again, it would be on her way to somewhere she had earned. Not to gloat, not to grieve, but to remember the line on the floor that taught her how to step. Out on the runway, the lights counted off the distance into the dark. When the sky asked again, she already knew her answer: clear, on time, and without noise, and the field, the tower, and the people who had watched her cross the hard part would answer with her.